Unmute. There we are.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our wonderful, Do You Hear What I Hear 2.0. With me are here Rocio Mazzoleni, our Paratiso president. She will be giving us a few welcome words.
Well, welcome everybody, and this is our second blended activity. Thank you to Susan. Susan is always collaborating with the Paratisol and the university. In this case, we thank Susan for being here, and she will introduce herself. You all know Susan, and I hope you enjoy this activities, webinar, this blended workshop. Okay, welcome.
Thank you, Rocio. And on behalf of the Instituto Superior de Lenguas and the National University of Asunción, it is our great pleasure to have with us our Fulbright scholar from the University of Alabama, Birmingham, Dr. Susan Spezzini. As you know, since from last time, she is a former professor of ours at the Instituto Superior de Lenguas. She taught several different courses, but especially phonetics and phonology, and she continued to specialize in the area of phonology and pronunciation, and therefore this is her main area of interest. And for us, it is a blessing. I was mentioning it to our students, and they were saying at a meeting, maybe Mr. Christoffel remembers, that they wish they could have more pronunciation training. And so this was, like we say here in Paraguay, como anillo al dedo. Dr. Spezzini, it's been out of the country for several years. She completed her doctorate degree at the University of Alabama at Tuscaloosa, and then was hired at the campus at Birmingham. And she's been there almost 20 years now, and we've kept somewhat in touch, but now in the last few years, thanks to our Fulbright collaboration, we were able to have her at our Applied Linguistics Congress as a keynote speaker. We also had her last year in a panel which she organized, and now she came to visit us. She's working with us on a great edited book for teachers that we will soon be able to benefit from. Our professors here, from other colleagues from FALEVI, from INAES, and from other local universities, as well as universities from all over the world and the United States, are contributing, and we are very excited to have her here with us. This is her farewell workshop. She's going back to the United States, but she will be back next year, so that is what comforts us, that we will have to say goodbye to her. So without further ado, we have Dr. Spezzini with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valentina, and thank you, Rocio, and thank you, Carol. And it's just wonderful to be here. I got here on May 6th, and the first few weeks were getting used to being back in Paraguay. I'd lived here from 1976 until 2002, and I moved to the United States, to my own country, in 2003, January. So it's been almost 20 years, and things have changed a lot. And here, I mean, there's asphalt roads all over the countryside, and everybody communicates just on WhatsApp. And so I had to learn a lot of new things because I hadn't used WhatsApp before. So at any rate, when I spoke here on June 23rd, and we had full house like this, and it was a very cold night, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great, except the aftermath wasn't so good because 2 days later I got COVID, but you know, it's one of those things. It was a lot of people. And so I'm going to, when I'm finished here, I'm going to put this on so that we can get close and etc. So yes, I have been focused, and then next year is another 3 months. So this year was May, June, July, and a few days into August, and next year will be similar. And hopefully by then they'll have a master's going for English if it's a foreign language, and I'll be working on that as well. But my summer, your winter, I was focused on editing this textbook for the English department, for the English program, for the licenciatura. And so, I mean, it's coming along very well. Okay, so do you hear what I hear? That's the title of this 2 series. The first series was 6 weeks ago, and the second part of this is today. And it's because we hear everything through our first language. Therefore, in the second language, we're not maybe hearing the sounds. That's why we're not pronouncing them. And that's why I call it techniques for helping English learners overcome pronunciation difficulties. Now, if you weren't here, let's just say how many people here tonight were here on June 23rd? Raise your hands. Okay, so I got lots of new people. So if we put together everybody that came on June 23rd, plus the new people that were here today, plus everybody who's watching on the screen, maybe for the first time, and a lot of them on the screen put their hands up, we're gonna have like 150 people. And this is very exciting. I'm very excited in 2 ways. First, because in 1989, I was one of the founding members of Paraguay TESOL. And that's when Paraguay TESOL started. And then I was the newsletter editor for 5 years and the president for 2 years. And so it was just so exciting to be part of Paraguay TESOL at the beginning. And now I've gone and I've rescued the newsletters, all of them that we wrote at that time, because I still found them in a storage unit in our house here and went looking for them. And so hopefully Paraguay TESOL can post the historical documents from the organization. And also I taught here at the Instituto de Lenguas for about 20 years. So it's like a 2-way welcome back. So coming back to my workshop. Okay, do you hear what I hear? And English learners and all learners of a second language hear the other language, right? Through the filter of their own language. Any sound you hear in another language, you're trying to match it to your sound in your first language, because your linguistic repertoire in your brain only has the sounds you already know, okay? And therefore, when you're going to speak it, you're going to speak the sounds that you think you heard, not the sounds that the other person actually said, which I went into this at great depth 5 weeks ago. And if you didn't come and you want to learn all about how that works with the vowel sounds, then that recording is someplace on YouTube or someplace on the Paratesal channel of YouTube. And so you can look it up. And so now I'm going to kind of go over the same concepts, but looking at consonants or listening to consonants. And English learners, and those are the people we're teaching, and many of you yourselves have English as a second language, and therefore you are going to be experiencing some challenges with pronunciation in English for a long time. I still am in Spanish, and I lived here 26 years, and I developed a very high level. So we're always experiencing challenges in pronunciation. And English learners need to know what is important with the sounds that they're learning. And for them to be important, that importance comes in the brain. So they're not saying it because maybe the most accurately because of their tongue or their mouth, or because their ears aren't hearing it, let's say because they have a problem with hearing, but because their brain is processing the sounds differently, processing them as in their first language. And all of us, as we develop our first language, there are phonological rules in our brain. And these are not rules that you learn in a grammar book. And they're not rules when you go to school. They're rules you have in your brain, unconscious to you as a native speaker, that you have well developed by the time you're age 4 or 5. And your tongue and your ears, you do this automatically. You're not even aware of it. And we're going to look at some of these intuitive phonological rules that are getting in your way. If you're a Spanish speaker learning English, go, why don't I hear that? Or I don't hear it that way. And also, if you're teaching English to Spanish speakers or speakers of Korean or Japanese or other languages, what's getting in their way of hearing and speaking? And so you have to always think, what is in the person's head that's causing them to hear it that way. So today we're gonna, last month, end of June, we focused on vowels. And today we're gonna focus on consonant sounds. So when I say consonant, I'm not talking about the letter, I'm talking about the sound or the phoneme. So we're gonna look first at the syllable structure. How are English syllables, spoken syllables structured? Then look at different types of consonants, not all of them, because this is not a course on phonology. This is a course on tricks. What are some tricks to help you teach or to help you learn better? So we're not going to do the whole course. You know, Christian Christoffel teaches it here, and I think at Poleve as well. He kind of took over from me at the ISL. Different other people are teaching phonology and pronunciation at other institutions. This is not a course on it. This is a course for you to think about it. This is a workshop for you to think about it, a workshop for you to say, oh, that's why, and then to get some tricks for some of the more difficult sounds. So first we'll look at some stop consonants, which are the P, B, T, D, K, G, then the fricatives and affricates, then the nasal consonants, the liquid consonants, and the semiconsonants. Now, if you're here because you're just starting with your university degree or teacher training, and you haven't had linguistics or phonology yet, I'm going to accommodate everybody, and I won't be using technical terms very often, okay? So don't worry about it if you don't know those terms. First, I'm going to explain the difficulty or describe a difficulty, then explain it, and then give some suggestions. Okay, so a definition of a syllable. Syllable has to have it has to have one vowel sound and only one vowel sound. It can be a long vowel, it can be a tense vowel, it can be a vowel diphthong, but only one vowel. Okay, now a syllable may or may not have any consonants. In other words, you might have just a vowel, or you might have consonant plus vowel, or consonant, vowel, consonant, or some consonant clusters beginning and end. So the capital V is going to stand for vowel, and the capital C stands for a consonant sound. So with a syllable structure, every language has its preferred way of joining the vowel and the consonant before or after. And that's in your head as a speaker of that language. That's part of your phonological rules that says, that's how my syllable is. And you don't know that. You can't express that as a native speaker. You can't tell somebody, that's how my language operates. You just know as a native speaker when somebody else is doing it wrong. That's all. Yeah. So a syllable structure is only the sounds. So if we have the word cat, like we have some cats running around with us in this room today. All right. So I purposely chose the word cat here. So I have cat has 3 letters, has 3 sounds. So the syllable structure is consonant, vowel, consonant. I have stream, but on stream, I have 2 vowel letters, 2 letters, which 1 vowel sound. So I have 3 consonants starting C, 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 then a vowel, V, and then a consonant, C. So we've got, so this is tricky in English because our vowels, the letters can have many different sounds, and a given sound can be represented by many different letters. And then we went over that on June 23rd. So I'm not going to go into detail here. Now, I can also have 2 letters that represent 1 consonant sound, such as these. The TH is 1 sound. So there's 1 C because it starts with 1 consonant. Now here, the final E on these has no sound. Therefore, it does not, it's a silent letter and does not get included in the syllable structure. So for these with 5 letters, I only have 3 sounds in the syllable structure, C, B, C. And many of you know this, and it's review, and other people go, oh yeah, I remember doing that a long time ago, and others go, wow, that's new for me, okay? So we've got a whole range here. All right, now, what is the simplest syllable structure? If a syllable has to have 1 vowel, and a syllable can have or may not have any consonants, then the simplest syllable structure is 1 vowel. That's a syllable. If there are no consonants before or after in the same syllable. Now, in English, that 1 vowel can be represented by lots of letters. If you look at that line there, I, oh. I don't care how many letters there are, though it's only one sound, only one vowel. Might be a longer vowel, but it's only one. Now here are a few more words. I mean, the syllable structure then is V. Each of these words has only one sound. And so the syllable structure is just V. Now, what is the most common syllable structure is with one consonant and one vowel. So one consonant, one vowel. That's the most common in the world among languages. So it can have various spellings, like here, all of these words, whether they have 2 letters, 3 letters, 4 letters, they all represent a syllable structure that started with one consonant and ended with one vowel. I don't care how many letters you see, but they've all got the same syllable structure.
And though, like though would be 2 sounds.
No, look at though right there in the next line. Though, there's just one consonant starting and one vowel ending, oh. Okay, and now the interesting thing in English, all of these extra letters, all of these silent letters, such as though, THOUGH, why is the GH there? Because it's telling, hey guys, this is the history of the English language. I used to be pronounced. So all of the silent letters in English, if your students say, why are the letters there? Oh, because they're saying, guess what? What a beautiful a trip through history. They're there because when the English language started to be written, those letters were being represented sounds. And over time, the sounds got lost. They dropped off. You know that in French, there's a lot of letters that they write that you don't pronounce. And we're going to see some in Spanish as well. Okay, so all of those, based on how I interpret, how I speak those words, they start with one consonant and end with one vowel. And that's a little confusing when an English learner is going, why do we have to learn to write all those silent consonants? Well, isn't there a way to learn them? Yeah, memorize them. Yeah, just learn them. All right. So right here is the explanation that the silent letters represent how the words used to be pronounced many centuries ago. And many of those came from Old German, because English is a Germanic language, even though much of the vocabulary today is Romance languages. All right, now a CV language. CV language, consonant vowel, are languages where all of the syllables have only 2 sounds, a consonant and a vowel. All right, all of them. And I don't think there are that many that are there strictly CV. There's many that are preferred CV. Come on in. But not that many that are just CV. Now, if you have a language that only has that syllable can only start with the consonant and with the vowel and nothing else, the speakers of that language, if they come into English, cannot hear the consonants at the end of the syllable because they don't exist in their brain. Their brain is not wired to hear any sounds at the end of a syllable. And they're not wired to hear anything more than one consonant at the beginning. Yes. I think there's a little bit more than that, but it tends to be like that. Okay, yes.
It's like Portuguese. For example, they will say, I don't know.
Right.
They always put an
right. And we're gonna get you guys are ahead of me. You're ahead of me. Okay. I'm gonna get to those, but that's good. I'm glad you're bringing up. We have a discussion in the audience about Guarani and the syllable structure and about Portuguese. All right, we're gonna get to that in just a minute, but good. That means everybody's listening. All right. Now, consonant vowel, a CV language does not have a closed syllable. In other words, cannot end with a consonant. They only have open, which means they must end with a vowel. So we're going to look at a language that is 100% CV, which is the Hawaiian language. It's not the English spoken on the islands of Hawaii. It is the original Polynesian language that existed in Hawaii before the English speakers came, okay? And there's still people that speak Hawaiian. So in Hawaii, the word for Christmas is said kalikimaka. Kalikimaka. You go, oh, that's an interesting word for Christmas. But guess what? That's how they hear the word Christmas. And I'm going to show you how in their language, when they hear Christmas, they hear kalikimaka. And we're going to use that as an example for how maybe a Spanish speaker or Korean speaker or German speaker who you're trying to speak English to might not hear all of our sounds. So if Hawaiian is a language, and I don't know Hawaiian, I just know one word, okay? And you don't know Hawaiian, but if Hawaiian is a language that is CV, and they have a language that's coming in and a culture that's coming in, and this culture brings Christmas and they want to celebrate Christmas, however they want to celebrate it, they've got to learn to say it. And they say it as kalikimaka. All right, so let's look at this example. So Hawaiian has no syllable final consonants, no consonants at the end of syllables. They don't have any consonant clusters. At the beginning of a syllable, they can't have two consonants, just one. So when Christmas was borrowed from English into the Hawaiian language, it needed to change its shape. It needed to change its sounds so that, and it's not that there is a ruler that's, you will now say kalikimaka. No, that's not how language works. Rulers and language academies don't work very well because people speak the way they speak, okay? So when we're thinking of speaking, so it's that everybody's brain who spoke Hawaiian heard it the same way based on their internal rules. Okay, so this is how Christmas is pronounced in phonetics, right? With a K and a R, I-S, there's no T, Christmas, you write a T, but you don't say Christmas, Christmas. All right, so that's how we say it, 2 syllables. And Hawaiian, Christmas is pronounced kalikimaka. Now, how did all those sounds change? My goodness, there's new sounds there that weren't in Christmas. There's sounds that changed, there's sounds that moved. Yeah. Okay, so the first thing that happened, the KR, Hawaiian could not have a consonant cluster, couldn't have 2 consonants together. So they had to break it up and they inserted a ah. So if you watch, you will see an arrow coming down between the K and see that circle, red circle? And then the sound ah moved down and it broke up the consonant cluster. Yeah, so they cannot have a KR together. So kri, they couldn't say, but they could say ka. And what happened? You go, wait a minute, what happened to the R? Well, you know, R doesn't exist in Hawaiian. Many languages have only R or only L. They don't have both R and both L. And much less like Spanish, you have R, L, L. I mean, you guys have a bonanza with the R's and the L's. All right. But many languages, especially in Asian, have only one, either R or L. So, and you as Spanish speakers and English speakers think R and L is so different. How can they be the same thing? Well, for most minds, they are the same thing. Okay, so the R changed into L. So now I have kal. Oh, wait a minute, I've got to get a vowel. Okay, the vowel stayed there, kali. So we went from kri to kali, or kri to kali. Then there's no S, and that's kind of unusual because most languages have S. And S in the front of the mouth is replaced by k in the back of the mouth, which is so strange. But then think of the word electric, electricity. So we have a KS combination or matching in English too. Okay, now watch the S turn into K. And there's an S at the end of the word. Do you see that? It turned into K too. All right. Then, because syllable final consonants do not exist in Hawaiian, a vowel is added after the final consonant in both original syllables. So after what had been an S, the S changed to K, and we added a I, and we added a ah. And why the I and the ah? Because it's the same as the vowel before that. So if I have kali, and then I add a vowel kini, all right, and the other ma, ka. So it had to match the preceding vowel. So I took a two-syllable word Christmas that had sound combinations that could not be heard and produced by the Hawaiian speaker. And that two-syllable word became a five-syllable word. And so if you go to Hawaii, apparently you are, as you are greeted, you say Mali Kalikimaki, because the Mali is Mary, right? Mali Kalikimaki. So Merry Christmas. So that I'm doing this not because I want to teach you Hawaiian, but I want to teach you the concept that learners of a language use their own language repertoire from their first language, and new sounds that come in and new words that come in, they adjust them automatically to match what they can hear and what they can say. And that's what you did when you were learning English. That's what, if you were an English learner, what you did when you were learning Spanish. And that's also what your own learners, well, your own students will be doing. All right, so we hear English through our L1 filter, our first language filter. And so if I'm from a CV language, I don't hear final consonants, I don't hear consonant clusters. And if I can't hear them, I can't say them. So that's why we've got to help. So I'm setting you up now for what might be words borrowed from other languages. Hawaiian borrowed Christmas and says kalikimaka in 5 syllables. So any word that gets borrowed has to change its meaning. And why are we looking at borrowed words? Because that helps you understand what your English learners are going to go to when all of English has to be learned, not just a word that gets borrowed in. Okay, so we saw with the Christmas, the kalikimaka, that sounds, we didn't see sounds being deleted, but they can be deleted. We saw sounds being added. We saw a little bit of movement. We saw a lot of sounds being replaced. These are the 4 things that will happen to sounds. They can be deleted, added, moved, or replaced in order for the new word to fit into the learner's linguistic repertoire. All right. So what we're going to do now is take this concept and see what happens to Spanish and English. So, well, first of all, there's a lot of languages that have a preferred CD. By preferred CD is, whenever possible, I want that syllable to be CD, but I'll take occasionally 2 consonants in the front and occasionally 1 consonant at the end. That's Spanish, okay? Where it's preferred for being CD, because look at Victor, what do you have? Don Vito, right? Don Vito came from Victor. You just take that word, Victor, which was a foreign word, and put it down to a CV, Victor, all right? And so there's a lot of things like that that you can see here. Spanish, Italian, Japanese, Vietnamese, Cantonese, a lot of languages have preferred CV. In other words, most syllables will have CV. All right, so if we look at Japanese, Italian, all words must end with a vowel, okay? All words. And so you have an Italian immigrant and they're always adding an E at the end. Okay? And then in Japanese, they also have CV, like the town of Nagasaki, okay? Consonant vowel. But then what happens in Spanish? Well, Spanish is preferred CV. I can have some consonant clusters, like at the bottom line there, I can have bravo and playa. So I can have the R and the L in the second position of 2 consonants. But, you know, like my last name, Spezzini, which is actually Italian, brought by a Frenchman to Paraguay to be for an American. But anyway, so if I am on the phone and I'm giving my name, Spezzini, and I have to go, Spezzini sin la E. Bajo ese. Spezzini bajo ese. Okay, that's what I have to say in order for the speaker, because if I just say Spezzini, the person on the phone will not hear the S. So I've got to couch it with the S and then say, pero sin la E. And then, okay, all right. And then if my husband is looking up historical documents of grandfathers and great-grandparents, he goes into the small Paraguayan towns, he looks under S, doesn't find him, say, mira un poco bajo E. They'll find it, okay? Okay, so let's look at football. Here's the English spelling, football. Now, that's a word. It went from England to the United States and around the world from England, I think. And when it came into the United States, the game changed to soccer, right? But We're just going to look at the word football. Okay, so the preferred syllable structure in English, we have many types of syllable structures, but in English this is CVC. So the first syllable is consonant, vowel, consonant, and the second syllable is pronounced. It's a consonant, vowel, consonant. CVC, CVC, 2 syllables. And the first syllable ends with the consonant. Football. It always has a T. If I don't say football, if I say football, I gotta get the T in there, even though it's not very strong. So Portuguese has to end with a vowel, right? You just told me that, Alexis. So what do they say? They go futebol. Futebol. They turned it into 3 syllables, right? It doesn't go 4 because it ends with bol. It's like a U. Futebol, bol. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So what they did is they added a fuchi, and the T changes to ch in Brazilian Portuguese. I don't know, Portugal does something else. And so I got with a 3-syllable word. Now, what happens in Spanish? Oh, yeah, está fútbol. Oh, futbolista. ¿Eh? Futbolero. Fútbol. Huh? Fútbol. Yeah, with the L, fútbol. Yeah, exactly. Fútbol. Yeah. And, you know, because what happens is some people might think, oh, I've been listening. There's somebody that's pronouncing a sound at the end of the first syllable. Oh, I can get an L in there. Fútbol. Wow. Or full, yeah. And so they'll any consonant will go or no consonant. Okay, so Portuguese adds vowels in order to get the consonant vowel syllable structure. And Spanish, we see, drops it. Okay, so there's Spanish. See the upper right, Spanish. Fútbol is spelled if you know how to spell. And the syllable structure for most people come out CV, CVC, right? Whereas in Portuguese, 2 languages very related until around the 15th or 16th century. But one language said, in order to keep CV structure, we'll add vowels. And the other language said, in order to keep CV structure, we drop consonants. And I don't care of the 22 Spanish-speaking countries, North America, South America, Central America, over to Africa, West Guinea, and then up to Europe, the same thing happens. Now, the more schooling a person has, and the more access a person has to other languages, and the more they started learning English early, or some other language that has syllable consonant, consonants and the syllable, the more likely they are to pronounce some type of T in Spanish. But they're not going to pronounce it very much. They're not going to say fútbol. Se hace nomás. Because you can't overpronounce because you won't fit in with your friends. Es cierto, no? Yeah, okay. All right. So in Spanish, we delete consonants. Now look at, here's some more examples. Okay, so we have an example of picnic. And in English, CVC, CVC. Very good. So in Portuguese, I got to add vowels. What was it? Piquenique. Oh, it's so cute. Piquenique. Kingi kongi. Barigi. All of these, okay? All right, so in Portuguese, we're going to add the vowels. And we get to Spanish, we're going to drop, me voy a un picnic. ¿No quieres venir a picnic? Picnic. Okay, picnic, no? Yeah. And so we just drop the K because unless you want to demonstrate that you know how to spell it. Now, okay, so then here's what happened. 2 years ago, I've been in the United States, back in my home country for almost 20 years. My husband went as an adult immigrant of English, right? Learning English. He's been learning English 101, 102 for a long time. Low and about intermediate now. So he bought a Fitbit. You know the Fitbit that goes. So one day he says to me, ¿Dónde está mi Phoebe? Phoebe. Now, Phoebe in English is a girl's name. Yeah. All right. Huh? Phoebe. Yeah. And so then I had to think and I had to put on my linguistic hat. So what is he trying to say? Phoebe. Okay. So it was Fitbit. And I go, okay, no sé dónde está. All right. So now this time in Paraguay, We go to a restaurant and it just didn't happen once, it happened 2 or 3 times. ¿Qué hay para postre? Chiqui. Huh? Chicle? Chique. Chique. In other words, here I was, I know what cheesecake is. I don't know what cheesecake is in Paraguay because it hardly existed 20 years ago. And then we said, ¿Y cómo es eso? And he describes the cheesecake. I said, oh, cheesecake. Sí, señora. Okay, because as a Spanish speaker, he's not or she's not going to hear the final S in cheese, which is a Z, and the K in cake. And everybody else who's ordering knows what he's saying, but I don't know it. Okay, so if we look on the left-hand column, that is a list of syllable structures that I didn't create the syllable structures, I created the list, okay? To show you that English has much more than a CV or a CVC. If you look at the very bottom, on the very bottom line, you can see we can have syllables that start with 3 consonants like street, sprite, es esprite, okay? La street, yeah? And school is school. Okay, so these are combinations that the Spanish-speaking mind doesn't have and that you've got to help. Now just look, and then sometimes we have tricks in English, like look at axe, that you need an axe to cut something. When you see the letter X in English, that's not 1 sound, that's 2 sounds. Okay, it's a KS or a GZ. So an axe and ask get confused. Asked has 1 vowel, 1 syllable, and ends with 3 consonants. It's impossible. You know, look at texts. How many texts are that has 4 consonants? It ends with 4 consonants, KSTS. And it's very difficult for English learners. But once I tried learning Russian, they had more consonants, okay? So we don't have the most, but we have many. Okay, so do you see everything in black? In the left-hand column, everything going down in black. That's the V or the CV syllable that speakers of a CV language can hear. That's what they can hear. The red is what they don't hear. The red are the consonants of a cluster that come before what their brain is wired to hear. And the red is what the consonants that come afterwards, what their brain is wired not to hear. In other words, the fútbol that comes out as fútbol is because that T at the end of the first syllable falls in the red. And so when you think about how many sounds that now again, as Spanish speakers coming into your classes, a final L and a final R and a final N, and you can have an R or L. So you're not totally CV, you're just mostly CV. But you can go down this one here, like play and pray. That's okay for Spanish speakers. But spray, no, spray. Eso spray voy a comprar. Spray. Huh? You got to break it up. You can get at the V, the C at the end, it can be a L or R, but not those T's in there. So it is a big challenge. And I think most textbooks don't look at this or don't, and you perhaps aren't being helped to understand that a lot of what we see as a consonant difficulty, I see it as syllable structure. That the consonants that they're having difficulties with is because it goes beyond the syllable structure in the English learner's first language. All right. So that later, when you look at this, because this is being recorded, you can go back and look at it and see it and go, oh, okay, that's what she said again. So that's why I'm going kind of fast, because we're going to cover a lot. So there's that box that shows you, these are the consonants, this is a CV that I, as a speaker from a CV language, can hear. All right, so now let's look at Spanish. Spanish, you can have a few more, you can have V or CV, V or VC, if the final C is a L, N or R, CV, CCV, so there's a few combinations. And you can have like here, ser, mal, pan, sombrero, Carlos, fútbol with the, drop the T. But what about when it comes verdad? Verdad? En serio, verdad? You know how to spell it. You're all here. But how are you going to say it? Well, there's also many dialect regions in the Spanish-speaking world. And one of the greatest differentials in how you speak Spanish is socioeconomic class in any country. It's not just geographic region or country, but it's also being isolated or being in a big city, but it's also the socioeconomic class and access to education. And if you're from Puerto Rico, you're going to say Puerto Rico with a little L in there. So I've learned a lot of different things being in the United States, different types of Spanish coming into there. Okay, so dropping consonants to create CV, which is what's happening in Spanish. Let's look at the word verdad. I don't think there's anybody here that says verdad. Okay, you know, and if you did say, you say that? What is your first language? Yeah, okay. So, but I bet you if you're with Frey, you've been here a long time, you might just say verdad. Verdad nomás. ¿Verdad? ¿Verdad? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, ¿verdad? ¿Verdad? Yeah. Okay, so, ¿verdad que sí? So it depends on how close you are, the context. If it's very formal, you know, like, sí es verdad. And there was a verdad, and, you know, I could say that as a professor, but then when the students are talking to one another, even though they're talking about the same subject, they will probably drop it because they're going to talk their teenage talk or their 20-some talk, right? All right, so verdad, when it's written, seems to be a CVC, CVC, but is the final consonant actually pronounced? Well, in everyday speech, it usually gets dropped somehow, all right? So there it shows the final D getting dropped. Now, what happens if we go de una verdad a dos verdades, and the D comes back? The D comes back to be the beginning of the next syllable, verdades, okay? And that's why you know it's there. And the same type of situation happens in a lot of French words. So it's a common occurrence, not just in Romance languages, but in other languages. If you happen to drop the final consonant, because it's by itself, you'll add it when it's the beginning of the next syllable. All right. And it's perfectly okay if you don't want to believe what I'm saying. I don't care. You know, if you want to say, I know, I always say a final D. I know it. Fine. It's okay. I somehow don't believe you, but that's okay. Yes. Exactly. They pronounce, we have a professor of French here, somebody who teaches in the French school. But yeah, I mean, the little bit I know about French is that if the consonant's by itself at the end, you don't say it most of the time, and then you add a plural, and then you're going to say it or add some other.
Some of them don't really put pronunciation by its form when you have a next word.
Right.
Starting with a vowel.
Mm-hmm.
So the last consonant might sound.
Join to the next, yeah.
Form, as you said, a new
Right, syllable. Yeah.
For the pronunciation for the determiner.
Right.
For it.
So one reason why I want to focus quite a bit on this, the final consonant, because I did teach EFL many years in Paraguay, and I would have students say, pero profesor, no, you know, I would emphasize the final consonant and mira, en serio, profesora, no importa. Yes, it's very important because the Spanish-speaking mind, how you pronounce the last consonant, final consonant, it's not important. Todos los años siempre somos lo mismo. And you all understood what I said with many words in there with a final S. And I didn't pronounce any final S's. And that would get understood from the southern tip of South America up to Canada and over to Europe. Because that final S is a signal of socioeconomic status, of regionalism, familiarity with the person you're talking about, formality, etc., but not for understanding. It conveys many things, but doesn't help with the meaning. Therefore, those English learners, when all those final S's in English, they're a lot. Many of them are Z's. And yet the learner, the Spanish speaker, unless you emphasize them and say it's important, they're going to say it's not important. I know that because when my oldest son was 3, he went to a preschool or nursery, guarderia, and his teachers were Spanish speakers trying to speak English. He came back with some of the strangest pronunciations, but but a lot of it was there were no final consonants. Okay, now, so we're going to add vowels. Okay, now something like spoon, sprite, street, stop, school, scan. That combination of SP, ST, SK is not in the Spanish speaker's mind. Okay, it's not like Spezzini. Sin la E, Spezzini. So, spoon, school, scan, el escanear. Right? Escanear, stress. Okay, so, you know, I can say, with a child or an adult, I can say, okay, let's try school and go, school. And they'll go, school. One, good. You know, why am I saying good? Because they're trying. They're becoming conscious. And you do it once or twice and say, vamos a ver más tarde, we'll do it later. Because you don't want to try it enough so often that they become stressed. You don't want to add to their stress. They become subconscious, but you got to point it out. We have to, and you can, their hand to school, and they go, it's school. And you go, okay, well, you stopped it right there. Keep going. Oh, all right, good. And you just have to see what works. So that's what it sounds like in Spanish, but Japanese has the same problem. Japanese speakers also can't say those words, but instead of putting the A in the front, they put a U in the back. So they, instead of spoon, they go supuno. And instead of sprite, supurito. And instead of street, suturito. I mean, I'm not too sure. Maybe somebody here speaks Japanese. I'm just kind of reading it. But, yeah. So don't just think, oh, it's Spanish speaker. We just don't know how to do it because they're Spanish speakers. Every single language has its way to take sound combinations that don't work in their language and adjust them. And if you're aware of that, then you can help them better, your learners. All right. So the English learner's preferred syllable structure often creates L1 interference. In other words, L1 interferes with how they're learning the L2 to pronounce the English words. Okay, so what's their challenge? Well, if the L1 syllable ends in a consonant, this final consonant might be a nasal or a liquid like N, L, R, okay? And they might be able to say that. But Spanish is a good example. Look at, and I've had American teachers in the US say, I don't know why my Spanish speaking students don't pronounce the final S. I know the S is in their language because I look at how their language is written and the S is written. I said, I know it's written there, but they don't need to pronounce it. Of course they have to, it's written. And I go, no, they don't. And they go, but this one's from this country and he does it. And this one is from this country and he does. Well, what does their parents do of this kid and what do their parents do of that kid? The socioeconomic status. Oh, is that a different? Well, yes, it is. Okay. Or they'll say, these kids don't talk to one another. They both talk Spanish. Are you sure? Well, they like Guatemala and Mexico. Oh, maybe Spanish they don't speak at home. Maybe it's an indigenous language. Oh, yeah. That could be. Or, oh, this one's from Argentina and this one is from Puerto Rico. They don't seem to get along. I said, well, maybe they can't even understand one another's Spanish. They're 6 years old, you know? So, you know. Right.
So that's kind of important.
That's right.
There is and you figure out what I mean, and then the person who figure out they learn and then they learn Spanish,
Mhm.
they tend to pronounce even less.
Right,
Yeah.
and exactly. So we have somebody here saying that in Guarani, they don't have a final S of a syllable, whether regardless where the syllable is in the middle of the word or the end of the word. And yes, that's a reinforcing factor, but Spanish wouldn't have, even a Spanish speaker who doesn't speak Guarani is going to have a similar difficulty with the final S's. The Guarani speaking Spanish speaker has more so. Yeah, but it's not caused by the Guarani, it's reinforced by that, probably. All right, so we'll move down. A missing S in English in the syllable final position at the end of a word is so important. That final S at the end of the word has 5 meanings. It can be plural, possessive, present tense, third person singular. The is contraction, like the cat's here. The has contraction, the cat has gone, the cat's gone, right? So that final S isn't just a sound. It's not just a sound. Sometimes house, it's part of the word. But most of the time, like cats, the cats are here. The cat's eating, the cat's house, the cat's going, the cat's gone. That final S had 5 different meanings. Yes, I know. And you have to keep insisting on the final S. Then you have to help them realize that if it's a dog, it's not an S, it's a Z. The dog's food and the dogs are here. And so that final S is, or Z, final S letter, Z or S sound is, when I teach this to teachers in the States, in elementary teachers especially, and they'll say, well, they're doing these grammar mistakes. They don't write any final S's. I said, it's a phonological. I said, what do you mean phonological? They can't hear the final S in their first language. They don't hear it in English. They're not hearing it in English. How are they going to write it? Oh, I said, so it's not a reading error. It's not a writing error. It's not a grammar error. It's a phonological interference with the first language. And I'm sure that happens quite a bit here too, especially in many of the bilingual schools. I know it happened at the American school where I worked for many years, where they're learning both to read and write both languages at the same time. And since they're mainly Spanish speakers, you need to point out the final S has got to be there. Then they start hyper correcting and putting it everywhere. But all right, but they're aware of it. Okay, so now if we're going to look at consonants and we're going to think voicing. So the voicing is here, the vocal cords. We looked at it some last month. Do it again in a moment. Point of articulation, where is the tongue? Across the roof of the mouth. Okay, so is the tongue, or let's say, is it bilabial with both lips? Is it alveolar, palatal? So where is the tongue? How is the tongue obstructing the airflow? Manner of articulation, how are the sounds being pronounced? Is it nasal or is it fricative? So, you learn that in a phonology course, but these are the 3 things we're going to take into account. So with the vibration, it's the larynx, which is here, the vocal cords. And if the vocal cords are tight, and this is a picture like looking down at it, and then they're going to buzz, and you can take a rubber band and go, and the rubber band will vibrate, and that can simulate the vocal cords. And if they're open like this, the vocal cords are open, and you look down, and the air is flowing through, and there's no vibration here. And how can you feel the vibration? And most of you were not here a month ago, so I'm going to show you 4 different ways to feel it. So take your hand, like everybody put your hand up, okay? And you want to have flat fingers and put the flat fingers against your throat and go. Okay, now go. Okay, now take them and put them right here underneath the chin and pressing against the throat and go. And now go. And why is this good? Because for a small child, where are they going to find this vocal cord, right? For adult men, you have a very protruding, Adam's apple, you can find it. A small child often can't, or they're going this, no, not like that. Or they go like this, no. But if they hold it here, they can get the same result. So this is often easier. Now, take both hands and cup them like this. You see how they're cupped? Like this? Put them on top of your head and press it down and go. And now go. Isn't that fun? Your head, your skull is a chamber like an organ and the sounds vibrate off of it. Now you're going to take your 2 index fingers and you're going to plug your ears, but not yet. Okay. Once you plug your ears, you can't hear me. The first time I put my hand like this, you're going with your ears plugged, you're going to go. And the second time you're going to go. And then I'll go like this and you're going to unplug your ears. Okay. So everybody plug your ears. Isn't that a good buzz? Okay. Little kids love it. Kindergarten and first grade teachers in the States go, we never learned that. And we're teaching sounds to English speakers and all speakers. And I go, I know. It's fun. I read it in a book. Okay. So just some reading will help you. These are the different places. The upper lip, upper teeth, between the teeth, alveolar ridge, palate, velum. If you don't know those terms yet, don't worry, you'll have a chance to learn them, but not tonight. Okay, now how? Manner of articulation. How is it sound being formed? Well, I taught phonology here and for many years, and it's tough. It's pretty scientific. And then I went to the States and began teaching it. And most of my learners in the States were graduate students. They were teachers, certified teachers of elementary school, secondary school. Most of them were monolingual. Most of them had no idea what it was like to be bilingual. And they had English learners in their classes. And I was trying to come up with a visual analogy to make things easier. So I compared how sounds are pronounced with the train, okay? And the boxcar, if I open the door of the boxcar, the air rushes out. So it's a stop. And then the fricative, it was like a cattle car. The air whistles through the bars, okay? Like whistling through my mouth. And then a dual purpose is an affricate. I don't know if they make dual purpose train cars, but I made one, okay? And so it was like a stop plus a fricative. And the grain car, the grain comes out the bottom, and the nasal, it comes out the bottom, not out the side. So I thought, well, I'll do that. Tanker, the liquid swishes around. And so I compared that to a liquid consonant. And a flatbed train car is just half a train car, just the bottom half. So I thought, well, that would be like a semi-consonant. It's really kind of half. Okay. So I did that for a while. So you don't have to use this, and you would never use that with teaching children or adults ESL, or English. But for teacher educators, sometimes it's interesting to think of analogies to help us learn concepts. Now, one thing that makes stop consonants, the p, t, k, g, b, and d, difficult is because at the end, well, at the beginning, they're released with aspiration. So if you put your hand up, put it in front of your mouth and go pan, and you can feel the aspiration, right? Tan. And that aspiration, yeah, there's a lot of aspiration there, but the aspiration is so strong that it feels like spit. And it doesn't feel like, but it's sensed to be like spitting to speakers of languages that don't have aspiration. And the reason I realized that was when I lived here in the 80s and 90s, and there would be comedy shows. I was watching it one night in Spanish, of course. It was a Paraguayan comedy show. And a Texan rancher comes in, a Paraguayan, speaking like a Texan rancher. Go, hola, ¿qué tal? And everybody wiped out the spit, right? And I'm going, oh my gosh. And everybody thought it was funny. And I was going, is that funny? Okay, so where does this aspiration take place? And of course, I then had to learn that in Spanish, I don't say, ¿qué tal? I have to say, ¿qué tal? Right? No aspiration. And I guess at first I used to say, soy americana with aspiration of the K. And then somebody said, you say that so strangely. Really? And I had to think about it. Okay, so syllable initial at the beginning of syllables is where we have that aspiration in English. But in English, at the end of syllables, the mouth doesn't open. Okay, if I say up, there's no P. I'm not opening. I say put, my lips open, but I say up. And here we have our English learners who are Spanish speakers. They have no P or no T at the end of their syllables in English, in Spanish, and they're coming into English, and we're not pronouncing the end of the syllable strong enough for them to even have a chance of hearing it. And again, when my boys were young, they went to preschools that were in, and they were trying to teach English. And I think my kids understood it. They weren't speaking English at the time, but these teachers that were teaching them had no final consonants, you know, and they would come and sing these songs and went, what word was that they're trying to say? Because they didn't get the final consonants going. So you just have to over-examine, like let's go to the lab. Let's go to the lab, okay? Let's go put it in the bag, over-exaggerate the final consonants so that the English learners have a chance to hear it. And then you can just reduce that. But once they get used to not pronouncing the final consonants, it's hard for you to get them to pronounce it. So over-exaggerate at the beginning on the final consonants, the end of the syllables. Okay, unreleased, you know, up, stop, and have them have mirrors or the selfie on their phones. Well, I don't need that, right? Thank you. But, you know, like, if you're watching the mirror and you say, stand up, and they can see it's closed, okay, up, all right. But if you say up and you open it again, then you're gonna have a stronger sound. But we don't release it in English at the end. Stop, and they say stop, because they didn't hear the P, right? You say, watch my mouth, stop. You go, oh, stop, and they'll go, stop. No. Well, you know, we're getting there. Okay, so it's on my lap. When's your lab? Where's it at? Which ad? So you get in phrases that are common to them and release them at the end. Open your mouth all the way. So the aspiration we talked about, if they don't aspirate, instead of pie, we're going to hear bye. And if they don't aspirate the tan, we'll hear dan. And if they don't aspirate the cum, we'll hear gum. If they're going to pronounce their Spanish T for tan and they say tan, and we hear dan.
Just an anecdote in England. I didn't make it possible after I was asked, where are you from? I just said, I'm from Paraguay. Yes, I know you are from Paraguay, but what exactly?
I know. And that example, every year that I would teach at the Instituto de Lenguas, I would share that and I'd get around the room, me too, me too, me too. Because if you don't have the P with aspiration, they're going to think, is it a B or a F? And then you're an international, so you must be from far away. And the thing is, you're saying Paraguay, and we want to hear you say Paraguay, you know, at the end. And so the whole stressing also was the same as far away. And I mean, it happens not just in England, in the US, to many different states. So you have to have the aspiration. Let me give you an example of the P not being aspirated, right? Pastor, yeah, pastor. So, but you don't say pastor in Spanish, you say pastor. El pastor, yeah? No, ¿cómo se llama? El pastor, okay? So we had a ranch, we bought a ranch. I was a small girl, moved there, and my mother had to write checks to the workers. And a couple of them were Spanish speakers. I mean, only a couple workers and they were Spanish speaking. And so the one young man, his name was Pastor. So he goes and says, and she said, your name, Pastor. Oh, okay. And so she writes bastard. Because that's what she heard. Bastard with a B. Okay. And she did that for many years. He was able to cash his check. Okay. Okay. Then there's another one at McDonald's in Alabama. My son went to work there. And well, first of all, he has the same color skin as I do, and he was being introduced in English by the boss. And so the kitchen workers were Spanish speaking. Ah, mira ese gringo que viene otra vez, otro gringo. They're talking about the gringo that who they didn't know was a Spanish speaker. And so then he goes to talk with them in Spanish. But at any rate, one of them, the name was Corky, K-O-R-K-E, Corky. What was his name? Jorge. Because he tells them when he goes to get his name tag, como, what's your name? Jorge. Ah, Corky. Ah, muy bien, Corky. Okay. All right. So that's not quite aspiration here, but anyway, you can have tissue, you can have a candle. You lift different ways for aspiration. There's a candle, it'll blow out with the English pan. It won't blow out with the Spanish bum. Okay. You can do a pinwheel. You can hold the tissue up on the back of your hand, pan and pan. Okay. All right. And so that's syllable initial. And then if you did with, now English has the Spanish P, T, and K, but in the middle of the word, like span. So, and the bottom line, span, stan, scan. So if I'm teaching Spanish to English speakers, and they all want to say, tan bueno, tan bien, and you go, no, tan, no. And so then, can you say stan? Yeah, stan. Okay, now say stan in English, but then tan, don't say the S, then you have the Spanish T. So if you ever have to teach Spanish, that bottom line gives you the words to get them to say the Spanish P, T, and K. Okay, now English T, American English T, has many allophones. Allophones means ways of saying it, different variations. So we have two with the puff of air. We have stew with no puff of air. We have cat, which not released at the end. Those are three. Now we have Betty, which sounds like the Spanish R, Betty. I had a friend, when I was in Peace Corps, I had a Paraguayan friend. Her name was Betty. Betty. Yeah, Betty. But we all said Betty. She said to me one day, ¿por qué pronuncian mi nombre como very? Because she heard her name being pronounced like very. I said, no es. Okay, cotton, which this for the British, it's cotton. For the Americans, it's cotton. And cotton means that the glottal here, instead there's no T in the front of the mouth, will go cotton, cotton. And so that's very difficult for English learners. I usually will tell adult English learners, just pronounce it like the Brits do. Don't worry about the Americans on this one. Oh, I'm sorry, the English. Yeah, not the Scots. Okay, nation is spelled with a T because it used to be pronounced with a T. So now it's an SH. Nature, spelled with a T, used to be pronounced as a T. Now it's a ch. Mature. There's a lot of different ways to pronounce that T, depending on the sociolinguistics, the region. And tree, interestingly enough, tree has almost like a CH sound to it, to where young children might spell it CHR, tree. And I hadn't realized that till not too long ago. So different ways to pronounce the T. Now, most of you probably, if you've been teaching English and teaching like past tense endings, and you'll teach it directly and say, okay, well, it ends with ED, but sometimes it's a D, sometimes it's a T. Some of you say, oh, but let me show you a different way to do this. You can have a bunch of words and say the words clubbed, logged, loved, bathed, buzzed, say them, have the students listen and go, what sound was the very last one? D. Okay. Then what about these words? Hopped, looked. Huh? But I see a D. No, don't worry about what you're seeing. Listen. Okay. Oh, a T. Laughed, missed. A T. Well, is T an exception? And the thing is, some teachers who haven't studied linguistics or haven't been taught this think, oh, it's just an exception. Sometimes it is. But there are very few exceptions. Most things that the untrained teacher thinks is an exception is a phonological rule or a historical remnant. Okay, so you could list these and then say, okay, now let's list the ones that end with a D and sound, D sound. And then you could be listing them on the board, or they could work in groups and list them and group them. And then what was the sound of the verb before you put the ED ending on it? Oh, that was a B and a G. They're both voiced. Oh, that's a V, TH, Z, that's all voiced. Oh, the vowels are voiced. All the blue, the ED, the D sound came after voiced. Then do it here and find that the T comes after voiceless. So it's totally normal. And the thing is, though, you're not telling the students, you're letting them discover. You're letting them explore. You're giving them, working with them and letting them explore it and find out the rule themselves. You make them into detectives. You don't need to have too many verbs to do this. And many of your most common verbs can be used. And when you take that approach to teaching grammar, letting them discover the sound patterns, it sticks because they had to think about it and they came up with their own rule. All right, so rule govern. Now you could do the same thing with the ED. I got some nice laughter.
Wow.
Was it, who's somebody wants to participate with me on
Me
the screen?
gané una hervidora eléctrica.
Oh, okay. All right.
Fíjate.
Okay.
No. Yo compré la rifa de Manu. Ya, una rifa.
I muted
Sure.
her. No, not yet. Ask to mute. Okay. Okay. So we have some laughter here. Okay. So discovering the rule. And if you let them discover the rule, it means a lot more. Okay. So I'm going to leave that here. You can do the same thing with third person singular. I've got 10 minutes. I want to show you a couple other things. And you can look at this. Huh? I know. That's why, but this S is so important because you've got 5 grammatical features. But the concept is have a small group of words, let them group it, work with them, have them come up with a rule, guide them to where their rule is, matches what is really happening, and make them feel like they're great explorers and great scientists.
Yeah, because if they discover those for themselves, they stick.
I know. Yeah.
Tell them, try
No,
to-
then it makes, it's just a dry subject. But this way though, and then you can say, and go home and tell your parents or your brothers and sisters that you're a great scientist because you did an experiment and you found the result. Okay, and so these sound patterns work very well for that type of exploring. All right, so if you have Arabic speakers, the F and the V are the same sound for them. Spanish speakers, the S and the Z are the same. You have S letters, the Z letter, but it's in all of Latin America pronounced as an S. So they don't hear the difference between S, this and the Z, okay? And so you need to work with that on the voicing. Okay, I do want to get to the TH we talked about. We mentioned last time that if you have a Cheerio and put on the tip of your tongue and put the Cheerio between the tongue and the teeth and go, you can get a good TH sound, okay, with a Cheerio. So this is the first time I'm putting this all in 90 minutes, so I've had too much here. Okay, so we said the V and the B a month ago, we said, think of the V as the upper tooth, because when the language started to be written, and they started to create an alphabet, they had to think of how can we write, what type of letter or what type of drawing can we use to represent what the mouth is doing? Therefore, O is the letter O, the sound O, because the mouth is circular. So they used a circle. V means the top teeth. So the V looks like the top teeth. So here on the left, you see that the V sound, V, has the upper teeth, and look at the V fits right into the upper tooth. So every time the Spanish speaker sees the letter V, even though they can't hear the difference between V and B at the beginning, or many years later, like my husband, but can't hear it. So then if they see the letter V, they'll go, oh, that point means the upper teeth. And then the B, the 2 bumps mean 2 lips. So those 2 letters are very problematic, those two sounds for Spanish speakers, but the shapes of the letter help them these things. And so they have to memorize the way it's spelled, just like I have to memorize if a word is written with one R or dos R. And I have to ask my husband, is it spelled with one R or two R's? He already knows the question. He knows the answer. He'll go, ese tiene una R. Aquel tiene dos R. And then I have to remember how it's spelled so that I can then say it, because I can say it. I just can't hear it. All right. So the ch-ja, if you have certain, like a French speaker has no ch or no j. A German speaker has the j, the ch, but not the j. Okay, so you have different languages coming to English. They don't have these sounds. Now you do have in Spanish a different difficulty. And that difficulty is, I'm going to get to the next page. You have a Y phoneme in Spanish across all the Spanish speaking countries, but it's pronounced differently depending on the country. Okay, so you have like yo, right? Or mayo, or playa, playa. So it can be a y, like yo, like in most of Mexico. Okay, yeah. You get j, like in Paraguay, yo me voy. Okay, mayo, mayo. Okay, it can be a j, like jo, jo. It can be a sh, sho, right? So it can be any of those variations. And guess what? Regardless where that movie is being shown and how that yeah is being pronounced, in all 22 countries, it's understood. And what is the way it's pronounced? Demonstrating or communicating. No, it doesn't communicate a difference in meaning. It communicates a difference in where the speaker is from, their their geographic background. That's what it communicates. So it does communicate, but not with meaning. They get to English. And in English, we have 5 phonemes in the palatal region of the mouth. The yo, all of those are different phonemes. So when they get to these words like yo-yo and joe and show, for the Spanish speaker, they don't hear a difference. Okay. So, you know, they have the yo, show, show, show. I mean, they all those different sounds just for them are geographic regions, different. And for us, it's a phoneme. Yes, Jess, chess. I had a British friend from England, not I'll say English, here in Paraguay. Her son was named Jess. She said the Paraguayan relatives kept asking her, why did you name your son Yes? She said, no, Jess. Yeah, yes. Why is his name Yes? Okay, yellow, jello, cello. Like, I want to eat some yellow today. And can I draw cello? I want to draw, you know, and so they hear those sounds the same. And you, shu, chew, jin, chin, chin, okay? And why? Because they're all pronounced in the palatal region. And the palatal region, the consonants in English, in Spanish, represent not differences in meaning, but sociolinguistic differences as to the country the person is from. Therefore, it's all one for them. And you really have to work on this. And it's not because your students are mainly from Paraguay. My son had a Spanish friend, friend at the American school from Spain, who was raised in Nicaragua and in some other country, and then came to Paraguay. And he still said, I can't tell the difference between yellow and jello. He was 17, been raised around the world in Spanish-speaking countries and couldn't hear the difference, and always in American schools, okay? So it has nothing to do with them being Paraguayan, has nothing to do with Guarani. Has a different, the thing is, in Spanish, in the Spanish language, you have those variations, okay? Like mayor and major. They get to school in the United States, to college. Yeah, my mayor is. Well, I don't care who the mayor of your town is. What is your major? Yeah, my mayor is Spanish. No. Okay. So there's the words that are very difficult there. I'm just going to go through this one. Oh, nasal consonants. And this was an example that was brought up a month ago, like the difference between, I forget what, it was a final N and a final M. And in English, we have final M, N, eng, and eng. Look it down here. Some sun, sung, sunk are for us 4 different ways, phonemes to end the words, right? But my husband doesn't hear the difference, and neither do most Spanish speakers, right? So why? Here's why. Because in Spanish, you have a rule that says that the final N will change based on the place of articulation of the following consonant. So you don't say un bebé, you say un bebé. Qué lindo, un bebé tan lindo, un bebé. Okay? Un poco nomás, un poco. There's no N there, it's an M. And so then, so that N becomes an M. Un fuego is labial dental. Okay? And then un taco, that's okay, that's dental. Un chico, it's palatal, the N. And then un kilo, un gato, like we had here. Okay. Okay. So what happens then when we get to English? The Spanish speaking mind says, change the place of the final N to the place of the following consonant in the mouth. So I'm Pablo and I'm big will come out fine because the Pablo and the big are bilabial. Then you get here and go, I'm funny. I'm fine. I'm fine. You go, no, say, I'm fine. I'm fine. Well, we'll work on it tomorrow. Okay. Then I'm Tony. They're going to say, I'm Tony. I'm Tony. I'm tall. I'm tall, teacher. No, I'm tall. And then I've had teachers come to me. I know they can say M and N. They say my and they say no, and it comes out just fine. But what's happening here? I said, it's the end of the syllable. Well, what's the difference? Well, the end of the syllable is regulated by a different rule in the Spanish speaking head. And it says, change the N to the place of the next consonant. So you got to work harder. So what do you have to say is, if it's an M, it has 2 bumps. It's the 2 lips sleeping. Always got to have 2 lips. And it's an N. You feel that little ridge behind the teeth? That N stands for the little ridge behind the teeth. And then if you can associate the shape of the letter to what the mouth is supposed to do, then maybe the kids can pronounce it better. And if the kids, the small children are doing this, the adults are doing it even more. So I'm shy. Yeah. And I'm Carlos. I'm good. I'm good, teacher. I'm good. I know you're good. Say I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, okay. We'll work some more, you know. Someday and someday the same thing. So someday they're going to say Sunday. And sometimes they're going to say sometimes. And so you have to get them to realize that if the M has 2 bumps, it's got to be the lips. You got to work at it. Okay. So there's some here, you know, we're at 8:30. This is a Korean one. You can figure it out, not figure it out, but you can read through it because you'll have to look at it. There's something else, oh, here we go. Okay, a sign for Japanese tourists. Gifutu shupu, gift shop. What does that tell us about Japanese? CV syllable structure. So they added vowels, gifutu and shopu. Okay, where was the gift shop? San Francisco, California, because, you know, money counts. Okay, wouldn't get off the plane. Now, this is in Malaysia. So bus, sekolah. What does that tell you about their language? Bus, sekolah. CV. So bus, sekolah, school bus. Okay, the school changed to sekolah, just like the in Hawaiian with Christmas and Kalikimaka, right? And what does that predict? What can you predict about the Malay grammar? Just like Spanish, the noun came before the adjective. So when you see signs, use them. So here, our goal is to develop listener-friendly pronunciation. Our goal is not to make native speakers. We're not creating speakers that sound like me. And people say I don't sound American anyway, so that don't sound like a native speaker. You have a lot of tools and you use hands for them to give responses. You find out what the different games are. You can have a fly swatter game for them to come up to the board and touch the sound that they hear. You can have minimal pair cards, and then learn about your English learner's first language. If you have somebody moving in from a language that you don't know about, look it up on Wikipedia. It gives some pretty good descriptions. Point out the difficulties and reassure, but don't spend too much time on it. Come back again later. Make them aware of it. Practice the minimal pairs. Use pictures and objects. Make them aware of what's important. Like if you look at P, 1P, Pete and Pete's. They hear all that at the time. It's teacher, I had two cats. You see, teacher, two cat. You know, you get them to get the final consonants. And then demonstrate your pronunciation, saying sounds, using objects, congratulating them, teachable moments. And here we are. And we need a picture of everybody before we go on. Okay. All right.
And what people just said about needing a picture of all of us, you need to have signed release form. Yes. If anybody arrived late and didn't fill out that release form, please before you go, we need you to complete it, okay?
Thank
So,
you, because
make sure for your photo to appear somewhere on the way.
it's a requirement of the University of Alabama because they have really strict human subject protection protocols. So before we take a picture, I don't know what this is, but we'll just do it like this. Okay, so first of all, we'd like to thank everybody for coming here. We would like to especially thank Susan for coming to Paraguay, for coming to the ISL, for coming to the university, for helping with Paratisol, for being so wonderful and giving us 2 great workshops. I hope you agree with me that did you learn a lot? Yes, okay. So before we take our picture, I would like to take this moment, to recognize Susan for this this generosity of coming and working with us and being with us and agreeing to work much harder than she thought she would, editing and revising multiple times our writing. So we want to give this certificate of recognition, Susan. It's very much similar to the one we gave you last time. And also, on behalf of the National University, I would like to give you an institutional pin. It hopefully you will take this as a token of our appreciation. And here we have a few things that I don't know if you will have room or way to take with you. We have an agenda, a book, like a, you know, from the university, and some university information if you want to take it and share it with your colleagues at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, so that they can know a little bit more about our university, a little bit more about the programs that we offered, and maybe they might be interested in signing some sort of cooperation agreement so that we can have maybe some exchange programs or some things that we can continue the collaboration, especially considering that we have such strong ties with you and through you, your university. So thank you once again. Maybe the Zoom people can turn on their camera so that we can take a picture on Zoom, and our hosts will be taking the picture. Take your cameras on. We'll take the Zoom picture, and then nobody moves. We'll take Susan and sit here so we can take up everybody picture, and so that, and then after that we'll be free to have some snacks and maybe ask Susan some questions.
Good. There are 61 people still on screen. Let's give them applause. Okay, so you can take the picture then.
Yes, yes, they're taking, someone's taking the picture. of it.
Somebody's taking the picture of it.
Yes, I
But
think,
that's one screen and we got to get more screens.
yes, they're taking it. The person in charge is taking all the
Okay,
screens.
Okay. they're
So
taking-
are you finished, Sylvia, with the pictures? Yes?
Sylvia's
She's,
talking.
Vicente is already taking pictures.
okay,
Okay.
so once you're done, we want to thank all of you. I mean, everybody here. We have a record of, I think 60 plus people came in person. 62 I counted, but I might be, we'll see the release forms later, how many we actually had. And then we have, at one point we had close to 70 people on the Zoom. So we have a similar number from last time. Last time we have fewer people here because it was so cold. But this time we were able to welcome more of you here, and that is great for us. We are really pleased to be able to give this hospitality to all of you. All of you who are not from here, you're welcome to come and visit us. Our library is open, so if you need to read books, you can come. Unfortunately, we don't loan the books to people from outside, but we do allow people to come and use the books and read them and take notes and everything. So thank you once again. Carolina, I don't know if you want to give, I see Carolina making eye signs. So if you want to, okay, so I don't know if we can say goodbye on the Zoom.
One more, I think we have to go to the next screen.
To the
Because
next
that's to
screen.
become a member.
Okay.
for-
Okay, well, let me bring it back.
But
Here we go.
they have another, that's to become a member for Paradiso, but then if you go to the next slides, you have a feedback form. That
Oh,
you
yes.
really need to complete.
Please don't forget to fill in the feedback form. Maybe,
Which one? This
Very
one here?
nice one. Yeah,
no, the other one, the one at the bottom,
yeah.
the one after that. That one, the last one.
Okay.
No, I think the both of them are, no, this is the feedback form, yes. No, but it on the Zoom, I think it's, do you see the feedback form, everybody? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, and they will send the feedback link on the chat also. And we have the QR here for the in-person people to scan it and complete it so that you can get your certificates. The feedback, it's important for you to get your certificates. And well, let's do this. I hope this works. Let's everybody wave to the Zoom people. Okay. Okay, wave, goodbye. Bye. Thank you. And I suppose, Susan, you can disconnect from Zoom,
Okay.
end your Zoom and.
Okay, goodbye,
Bye,
everybody.
Susan. Goodbye.
It was a pleasure to
Bye-bye.
see you.
See you
Bye-bye.
around.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
And you can here.
Trying to get my, yeah, I know, I'm trying to get the, see, it's.
So make
somehow I-
sure that you scan the code. Because we need feedback, like speakers need feedback. They always want us to give them what the people thought, and you can download your certificate.
Okay,
And-
so now we need the picture here in front.
Yeah.
So. More.
We can hear you, Profe.
Hi, Miss Weaver.
Gaby.
Hi, Miss Weaver.
Ah,
How are you?
Hello, my
Hello.
dear. Hello, my
Hola,
dear.
Sharon. Hello, hello.
¿Qué
Hi,
tal?
profe. Bien.
Yes, this is wonderful.
Yes.
I'm so happy to see friends and current students. So wonderful and so nice to witness Professor Spezzini, ¿verdad? Qué lindo.
Hi.
Y bueno, humildemente, good evening. I'm still trying to fill out my form. As you know, this is, hello, Susan. Hello, my dear. Sí, qué lindo, qué lindo.